Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Walmlsey. Welcome to today's session with industry legend Greg Savage. Greg, delighted to have you here. If there's ever a time to look for inspiration and ideas about leadership, it's today's turbulent market, more than ever in my career in recruitment, and I'm sure the same for you. Before I hand you over to Greg, many of you will be aware of Greg's very insightful, to the point, hard-hitting, but always an underlying truth blog. His post on LinkedIn, there was one this week, which you may have seen, which was really insightful about what's going on in Australia in the current crisis. But I first met Greg about 15 years or so ago when I was touring Australia with the RCSA, which is like the REC in the UK. And I was struck by, back then, legendary status. I mean, pretty much everybody seemed to know you, Greg, and I very much enjoyed your presentations. I also enjoyed that beer we had before Christmas. Shame that we can't do that nowadays. But Greg has built and sold more recruitment companies than most of us have worked for. He was voted the most influential recruiter in Australia in the past 60 years. And pretty much every word that comes out of his mouth, as far as I am concerned, is gold. So I'm very much looking forward to your session today, Greg, and also to remind everyone that there is a Q&A tab within this webinar where you can post questions to Greg, and I'll pick those up at the end. Greg, pleasure to have you with us, and over to you.
Mike, thank you very much. Thanks for those very kind and highly exaggerated words, but I'll take them. Thank you very much. And hello to everybody listening in. You know, Mike, you'll know that we planned this webinar long before the circumstances that face us in the world today were upon us. And so it just occurred to me as I was looking at my PowerPoint that really the content is really inadequate for the reality that faces us, because actually to deal with as a leader what we're going through now, and as Mike said, it's as testing a time as any of us, I should say, have ever seen. And I've been through 4 or 5 recessions and a few downturns. You have to have actually had a history of being a good leader to have the credibility to lead in this situation. So I'm going to go through my presentation. It all holds true, but you've got to see it in the context of this is how we have to behave as we build our business. And it'll help us build a substantial business, but it'll also, this is what I've learned in my own experience. I started as a manager in recruitment as a very young man. And as I look back, I was incredibly incompetent, really. But as I got better, I found that it's in the moment of crisis that your leadership can save a business and see it through to the next stage, because you have the credibility that people will believe you, you have the authenticity that people will follow you. But it's like you have to build up this goodwill equity over time with people by leading in the good times. A lot of people look as though they are good leaders in the good times because merely by managing the process, you can be successful. And there's a big difference between managing and leading. And you might be a competent manager, and that might see you a certain way, a certain distance, but you won't build an exceptional career as a leader, and you don't get a great team without a great leader, a great manager. Sure, I'm not deriding management. We have to manage, which is to get the process done properly. But leadership is something else. And so people say, well, what's the difference? And I promise you, nothing you're going to hear today you'll get out of a book. This is just my hard-earned, series of cock-ups I've made over my life that have allowed me to get better at this. And I like to say that manager is what you have on your business card, and leadership is how you influence attitude and behavior. So I can call you a manager, you can have the title of a manager, and you might even be able to go and tell people what to do, but once you leave the room, leadership is influence of attitude and behavior. And so as I say that, it's worth you listening, no matter what level you're at. You might be a junior manager, you might be a CEO of a big company. You've got to ask yourself, and it's a kind of a confronting question. Do you influence attitude and behavior in the people around you, for the positive, I mean? Because that's the role of the leader. That's what defines you as a leader, your ability to influence people to change their behaviors in pursuit of the corporate goals, obviously. And another way I like to talk about it is to say that managers have subordinates and leaders have followers. They also have something else, which is going to be, I think, my final slide. But for the moment, I want to talk about the difference between subordinates, where I'm your boss. I have power over you. I tell you what to do. While I'm standing over your shoulder, you will do it. And while I've got control of your employment and your bonus, I can basically subjugate you to my will to a degree. That's not leadership. Leadership is entirely about people following you because they believe in the direction that you're setting. So if you're going to be a leader in a recruitment business, which is all about people, it's absolutely key to your success and your career going forward. I don't believe really average leaders take a business to the top. And of course, technology is going to be important in our business going forward, but it's talent that's the epicenter of competitive advantage, right? We know that. We've got to get the right technology. We've got to have the best technology. And a lot of our industry is going to be automated and it'll take care of the drudgery. And mostly in time, all organizations will be able to afford the best technology, or substantial organizations. And so technology is not the differentiator. It never is. We've all, got the same stuff, really. People are the differentiator, and people are going to gravitate to the best leadership. And I can tell you that from 40 years of doing this business. And so it doesn't matter what technology you've got, doesn't matter what strategy you've got, neither of those things will save you. You do need those things, but the leverage point is still the people that you retain. Now, and motivator, obviously. Now, the good news is some people get nervous by the word leadership. They think, gee, I'm not Nelson Mandela. I'm not the captain of the Wallabies. I'm not the head boy at school or the head girl at school. They were naturals, right? And it's true. There are people like that. But here's the news. You can get better at leadership. It can be learned. It can be practiced. I promise you, it's no different to kicking a football. Well, it's very different to kicking a football, but the similarity is you get better at that skill by practice, by feedback, and by improving on your competency. So that's why we're having this session, because I'm going to give you some tips and some things that I've learned from my mistakes that you could actually work on. And it's very important, because you've got to understand that what got you this far in your career, wherever you are, it won't be enough to get you where you want to go. We know the world's changing. And I mean that statement over a period of time. We know it's changing recently. But on that point, we will get through this, by the way. It looks dismal, but we will get through it. I don't know how long. And when we come out the other side, the companies that have survived, if they've got good leadership, will thrive. And there will be great opportunities. But on an individual level, you've really got to be the sort of person who is constantly looking at your own competencies and saying, I need to improve. And if you want to be a great leader, if you want to manage a business, own a business, have a career that goes beyond the actual nuts and bolts of recruiting, then you're going to have to add to your skills briefcase continually, because it can be learned, it can be improved. And another question that's, when I talk to leaders, it's worth asking is, you were a good recruiter and you showed a bit of spark and a bit of coaching ability. And so you were made the team leader and you did a good job of that. And then you were made the manager of 8 people or 10 people, and started to creak around the edges a bit, but you still did well and the market was in your favor. And so suddenly you were made the general manager of 40 people. And the question is, have you actually been promoted beyond your level of competence? We know that's the Peter principle. And I see this all the time. I mean, often it happens at the first step that the great recruiter gets made the manager, and that is beyond her level of competence right there. And often people's careers get screwed up by that decision. So you've got to examine yourself. And if that's true, then you've got to catch up. And people often ask me, well, how do I assess whether I'm right for leadership? Or people say to me, but I am a good leader. Look, I've got these 8 people reporting to me, but that's management. You've got to ask yourself this question, another uncomfortable question. You want to be a leader? Why would anyone want to be led by you? That was a question I used to ask myself. I couldn't sometimes find an answer, to be honest with you. It's a frightening question. Why you say to people, intrinsically, it's built into the role of leadership, I want you to follow my lead. And you can't do anything in business without followers, particularly in the last 5 or 10 years. There's a different style of person that's come through the workforce. People want to believe. They don't do what they're told. When I started my first job in recruitment in the 80s, you did what you were told, and you did that because you'd done that for your father, you'd done that at school, and also you get fired at the drop of a hat if you didn't. It is not like that these days. People don't follow blindly, and you have to harness their passion for the direction. They have to believe in where they're going. So therefore, you've got to ask yourself, what do you bring that would encourage someone to follow your leader? Remember, when I say follow your leader, I mean they're going to follow your example even when you're not there. What do we mean when we say leadership? What does it actually mean? Well, I've come to understand this, and bear with me on this because it's important to work our way through this. To most people, the people who are in business, the people who matter to them, the people who they're inclined to listen to, the people that they will follow, they're not the people with the biggest titles, the most successful track record, who make the most money. They are the leaders or the managers that care and the ones who make a difference in their life. So that's when I say to you, why would anyone want to be led by you? The answer is inevitably, they will be led by you if they know that deep down you care about their professional success. I don't mean care about them in some hippie, groovy way. I mean that your staff need to know that you actually have their professional self-interest at heart. Yes, you are trying to get them to bill more. Yes, you want them to be successful, but you also want them to be successful, I should say, not only for your sake, but for theirs. And here's the news. They will know the difference. They will know the difference. And the second part of the equation is people will follow people who make a difference in their lives. And again, I mean this in a professional sense. You can think yourself about when you were younger, maybe it's even now, you can think of people who have made a difference in your life, who trusted you, who coached you, who gave you that chance, who taught you things, who mentored you, who influenced your values. These are the people who made a difference. And this is who you need to be if you want to be a leader. Now, it doesn't have to be in some bloody earth-shattering way. You don't have to sort of help someone become a Nobel Prize winner. It might just be encouraging them when they're having a bad month, taking the time to coach them on something. People remember that far more than anything else you're going to do. I like to say your managerial authority lasts about as long as you're in the room, maybe, but influence lasts forever. And that is the hallmark of a leader. Somebody who's influenced your ethos, your view of the world, your ethics, your work ethic, your whole view of the recruitment industry. And that's leadership, and that's what we've got to strive for. 3 words that I use to define leadership. Leadership is action. And I'd like you to think about that statement, because it's what you do that counts, not so much what you say. Now, I'm a good talker, let me tell you. It's 9 o'clock here. I've been on the phone or Skype meeting since 8 o'clock this morning. It's 15 hours in a row, and then I got a break, and now I'm talking to you guys. So, and I give speeches, and I'm quite eloquent, and I can string a sentence together. And I use that as a leader, but it only takes you so far. In fact, if your words do not align with your actions, your credibility as a leader will crumble. Okay, so the type of leader who's like a halftime football coach, come on guys, we can win this game. You know, we're down 66-0, but we can win this game. That is just flim-flam, right? You do need to be articulate, and later on I'm going to talk, and when I say articulate, I mean ability to communicate in a certain way, which I will talk about. But it's your behavior that people will remember and emulate. It's your example that people will follow. Leadership is showing the way, not just telling the way. I can't express upon you how important that is. So as I go through these 7, very modestly called the savage 7 C's of leadership, as I go through them, remember, it's all embodied in the way you behave. Of course, your words are important. You can crush someone, you can demean someone, you can build someone up with your words, you can set a great strategy with your words, but it's your actions that follow that. It's no good saying we are a company that treats candidates like gold, and then you leave your candidate in reception for an hour and a half or whatever. They will remember your action way beyond your words. So I've got 7 of these, and they all start with a C. So there were probably 4 or 5 others, but I couldn't include them because they didn't start with one, 2. So here are the 7. The first is clarity. Great leaders leave no room for confusion. It's a tremendous trait of a good leader that they can articulate clearly what we're trying to achieve. You know, if I said to you, hey, you've got 10 people in your business, I'm going to invite them all into my office one by one, and I'm going to ask them, what's the vision of the company? What's the strategy of the company? What does good look like in your company? What are the behaviors we value? What are our values? Could everyone articulate? Is the question. And the answer almost certainly is no. You'll be amazed at how unclear people are. And that's a leadership issue. What's the business plan? What are the priorities? What will I be rewarded for? Not just my commissions, but my behaviors. So a great leader will ensure clarity around expectations, for example, activities required, behaviors that are acceptable, and in fact, behaviors that are admired, I should say. And a good leader will spell out how the individual goals for each person will wrap up into the corporate goals. I remember I was running a company called Acclaimed many years ago, a big company. I was responsible for the business outside America. That was quite big. We were in 17 countries. Anyway, one day we were in a meeting in Sydney, and we were talking about an individual in the Sydney office, and it was generally agreed by the leadership that he wasn't making it, and you know, he may not have a future with the company. Anyway, it was a Friday afternoon. It was the last day of the month. The business had done well. It was drinky poos down at the local pub. Of course, that's where I decided it's always time for me to join in for that part of the day. So off I went for drinks and the celebration. I ended up sitting next to this guy. And in the way of small talk, I asked him how he was going. And here's where it got ugly, because he turned to me, his eyes were sparkling. He said, Greg, I'm loving it. I'm doing so well. I have got a great career in recruitment. I'm loving what I'm doing. My heart sank, not for him being misguided, but for our awful leadership, because we were having conversations about his future, and he thought he was doing great. And he wasn't stupid. We just hadn't given him the right message. We hadn't been clear. And on the Monday, I got the troops together, and I said, what are we going to do? Because we've got to communicate with this guy. And we agreed that in trying to encourage him, we'd let him to believe he was doing well. There wasn't clarity. We hadn't been brave enough to say, mate, we like these things, but you're not hitting your goals. This is not acceptable. That's leadership, clarity in those situations. And so we need to have great clarity, but we also need to create a great climate. And this is something that is more subjective, but it's just as real, because you need to create a climate in the office. And by climate, I mean an environment, an atmosphere, a vibe, an ethos. You know, the leader sets the tone. Even if she walks in or he walks in, slams the door and goes into her office and closes the door, the whole vibe drops, the productivity drops. I believe in intelligent optimism. When I'm hiring people to lead or promoting people, me personally, I'm a tragic optimist. Once I've done my planning and I put it in place, I almost cannot countenance that it won't succeed. Okay, sometimes I've been proven wrong, and you've got to wipe the egg off your face, and you've got to go again a different time. But intelligent optimism. And by the way, when I say intelligent optimism, let me put an emphasis on intelligence, because a leader who's sort of this sort of leader, hey guys, it's the last week of the quarter. Our goal was 300,000. We're on 92,000, but we can make it. That's bullshit, right? That's not intelligent optimism. People will see through that. Yeah, intelligent optimism is just believing in the vision, talking to the positives, dealing with negativity and turning it on its head. I believe in positive mental attitude. And leaders influence attitudes by the way they talk, by their verbal and non-verbal cues. And you've got to be very much on, you know, and it's difficult, right? Because we're human beings. We're not robots. We have tough days. We've got problems at home. We've got things that annoy us. But we've got to be quite stoic in a sense. You can show your disappointment, you can show your annoyance, but you can't show your panic. You know, and a good example, it's kind of crazy example, but you know, you're flying in the airplane. Of course, that wouldn't be these days, but let's go back into the ancient past when we used to fly in airplanes, and it hits some turbulence, right? And everyone goes, oh, and people grab each other's arms, and everyone sort of goes pale. And then the captain's voice comes on, and it's always, ladies and gentlemen, that's just a tiny little bump. Everything's absolutely fine. The last thing you want to hear in that person's voice is panic, right? When you hear panic in that airline part, then we're all panicking. Now, that's an exaggerated example because it's a life and death scenario, but it's exactly the same in the leader creating a positive environment. And I would say to you that we are actually far more influential than we realize we are. People are looking for the nuance of your guidance. And so when it comes to morale or mood or momentum, you have a far bigger impact than you actually appreciate, for the good or for the bad. And I ask you to consider that. I see leaders pulling the mood down so often with their response to I saw this in the Brisbane office of a company that I'm associated with. Fucking broke my heart. I was sitting there, we'd had a board meeting or something, and it was a lunch break. And a young recruiter, he'd been there 6 months, came to the manager and said, here's the shortlist of the candidates you asked me for your job. And he gave her 2 resumes. She flipped through one and she threw it on the floor and said, what were you thinking? To this guy. I was behind her. I saw his face fall. He was crushed. He was embarrassed. What was the point of that? I had to call her aside, even though I wasn't. I said to her, what was the point of that? What was the outcome? What were you looking for? She said, nothing. It just was a bad resume. I said, but that was your chance to coach. That was your chance to build. That was your chance to encourage. Instead, you crushed. It'll take you a year to get that guy back to where he was this morning. Slight exaggeration, but you know, it was just such a poor piece of leadership. And even though I've seen some disastrous things in my life, and committed a few of them, that was pretty bad. And so we're on to the third C, which is, of course, the, again, modestly named, savage 12 communications commandments. I said leadership is action, and it is. But of course, the words you use are important. And there's 12 here, and I can't go through them all in detail. So I would just tell you this. You are never going to be accused of over-communicating, okay? You're not going to have a guy come up and say, look, I'm resigning. And my main reason for resigning is you just share too much information with me. You keep on telling me the company's plan. You keep on telling me the direction. You keep on telling me what I'm doing right. You keep on correcting the things I'm doing wrong. You give me so much training. You just communicate too much. I'm going to have to go somewhere else where they don't tell me anything. You know, send me an email the day that happens to you. It won't. But you will definitely hear people say, I don't know what's going on. And it's in this environment where I said before that you earn the goodwill equity. If you have always communicated with people, now when the shit is hitting the fan and you need to communicate with authenticity, they will believe you because you've communicated in the past and they will follow you. So you've built that up. And as I said, I can't go through all of these, but it's certainly important. If you can, tell people everything or tell them nothing. It's always possible, but I do remember a classic example where a woman was running a recruitment company and a call came through and it was her real estate agent and said, her landlord, and said, hey, you know that your lease is up in 3 months? And she said, yes, I know, but I've got an option for another 2 years. He said, no, you haven't. That was last time. You're out in 3 months. She got up off her seat. She went out into where the consultants were and she said, look, she started with the classic words, don't panic, she said. They all started panicking. And she said, we've got to be out of here in 3 months, but don't worry, I'll fix it. She went back to her room and closed the door. From that minute on, there was no more work. The conversation was, we're going bust. The conversation was, we're going to move to the north side of town. I won't be able to get there. The conversation was, somebody's going to get retrenched. None of that was true. What she needed to do, once she'd finished speaking to the landlord, was get up, get her accountant or somebody, go out and find some office space, sign the deal, come back and tell everyone, good news, we're moving somewhere better. So don't think you have to tell everyone everything. It is good to communicate everything, but once you've got the answers, is better. Let's move on a little bit further. Big one, the one that says deliver. What that is, and you're all guilty of this. Everyone on this call is guilty of this because it's in the human, part of the human condition. Your biggest mistake is not to deliver on your commitments. Okay, guys, the market's down. Oh, I don't want to use that example. Let's say this is 8 months ago. The market's down a bit. We're short of job orders. So on Monday morning, we're going to have an 8 o'clock meeting, and every day next week, we're going to have an 8 o'clock meeting, and we're going to develop some business development plans. All right, good. See you 8 o'clock Monday. 8 o'clock Monday, you don't turn up because you've got to drop the kids off at school. Tuesday, you've got a Skype meeting with the Perth office, and Wednesday, you forget about it. Listen to me very carefully. If you do not follow through on your commitments, it kills your credibility and your trust. And if you don't follow through on the small things, they won't believe you on the big things. So if you had a history for big talk, no action, never following through, always promising and not delivering, now when you need people to trust you, they will not. Because they couldn't even trust you to turn up at 8 o'clock on Monday when you promised. They couldn't even trust you to go on a client visit when they promised. They couldn't trust you to whatever it was. So these are all the practical leadership examples that we all make mistakes about. The other thing, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, is tell the people the right things. I'm on the second last one. I'm sorry I can't go through them all with you, but it's heading towards 10 o'clock at night here, and you've got work to do as well. But you know, this is easy to make a mistake. So the golden rule is this: you never say something negative to one person in your team about another person in your team. Never, ever, ever. Now, if you're talking to if you're the director and you're talking to a manager and you're talking to the manager about a consultant, yes, of course, you can have a frank discussion. But if you're talking to one consultant about another, you cannot say anything negative. Now, you're all saying I'd never do that. Well, I'm saying you do that. I'll give you an example, real life example. I'm standing at the lift, up walks Bruce. It's the end of the day. I'm heading down the lift. Hey, Bruce, congratulations on the results from the 10th division this month. That was fabulous. Yes, he said, we really cracked it. It was great. Everyone did really well. And I say, yeah, everyone did well, although Mary fell short of her target. Sometimes I think Mary's a bit lazy, I say. Anyway, Bruce, have a nice weekend. Now, here's the news. When that message gets back to Mary, the way she hears it is, Greg called me a lazy bitch. Because that's how human beings work. And is Mary going to be loving the fact that Greg, her big boss, goes around telling Bruce, her colleague, that she's lazy? And Bruce, in the lift, is he thinking, Christ, Greg says that about Mary. What does he say about me to the other people? Be very careful. It crushes your credibility. And I hear people doing this all the time. By the way, you can say something positive to a team member about somebody else, because that will get back too, and that's okay. Very importantly, don't have communications favorites. You know, we're going to like some people in our team more than others. We're going to get on better with them. We may even socialize with them. You've got to be careful. If you get a reputation for sharing information with certain people over others, your credibility is crushed. They won't believe you. They won't trust you. It's very easy for it to happen. Years and years ago, a company called Recruitment Solutions that I started and became a pretty big company. We had a touch football team, and I was younger and fitter, and I played in that team. And I was one of the owners of the company, but everyone played, right? You know, we had all sorts of people, guys from the accounts department, the receptionists. It's great, good fun. And we go for a few beers afterwards, no surprises. Anyway, one day, in a moment of peak, somebody who was not on the touch football team told me that no one trusted me because you had to be on the touch football team to hear the inside information. I was absolutely shocked. I denied it. I was horrified. But what had happened is I was sitting there, probably beer number 3. Somebody had turned to me and said, hey, Greg, the company's going well. What are our expansion plans? And I said, we're going to open an office in Adelaide, maybe. And maybe in this particular case, I said, we're thinking about opening an office in Chatswood, which is north side of Sydney. Anyway, by the time it got back to the office, the conversation was, I said we were going to open an office in Chatswood. And this woman came to me, she lives in Chatswood, and she said, Greg, I've been in this company 5 years. we're opening an office in Chatswood. You haven't even told me. I'd like to work there, and you've got to be on the football team to hear that. So I didn't mean it. I didn't even say it, but it doesn't matter. The perception was I had favorites. It completely crushes. You know, I'm giving you these real life, little tiny examples, but it's the sum total of these behaviors that separates good leaders from the rest. So communications, and then of course, just a bonus one, authenticity. I mean, it doesn't start with a C, so I had to put it there as a bonus. But trust me, while you've got to be a good communicator, don't finesse it. Don't gild the lily. You've got to be authentic. You know, you've got, and by that I mean, you know, it's okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. I'm buggered if I know, but let's find out. It's okay. Your credibility increases when you say it, because people know you don't know everything, right? So be authentic. You might even say, give me an hour to think about that, mate. I'm not sure. People really value a leader who is authentic. And, you know, I see it in other parts of my life, because I write this blog, and, you know, a lot of people read it and all the rest of it. And sometimes people stop me and say, hey, we like your blog. And I go, oh, great. And they go, well, we don't agree with anything you say, but we like it because we know it's you speaking. We know it's your opinion, and we value that. You're in a world of false news and you know, people finessing everything about their communications. We really love, we sometimes agree, we sometimes don't agree, but we love the fact, and not only that, your blog sounds the way you speak. You speak like you write, or you write like you speak. That makes us think you don't get it ghostwritten, that you actually write it. And I go, well, yeah, there's only me. So authenticity is so valued in leadership, and very important. So we're on to the fourth C now, with that little renegade A getting in there, but the fourth C is coaching, and this is very, very important. A great leader is a coach. Now, telling people is often bad. Training people is better. Coaching is best. When I was a young manager, I was 25, I used to tell people, so, okay, mate, hold on. This is the way you'll deliver this offer, okay? This is how you do it. And I was probably right, because I was a good recruiter, you know, better than most, whatever. But people don't like to be spoken like that. Coaching is better. Teaching is better. And coaching is made up of two things. It's recognition of things done well to reinforce those behaviors, and it's corrections of things done badly. But the important thing is it's done in real time. It's done on the field of play. It's done. I'll tell you a secret about coaching. People learn in the moment of ecstasy or the moment of disaster. Right? So if you want someone to learn, do it just as they put the phone down when they have an offer turned down, because they're paying attention, right? They just lost a $15,000 fee. They're paying attention. And that's when you coach. You don't lecture, but you coach. You're like, mate, bad luck. That is devastating. What did the candidate say when you said X, Y, Z? And so you talk it through, and then you're saying, hey, is there another way you could have approached that? You know, that word you used, when she said that, was that a signal about something? And so you coach, and they're listening, man. They just lost a 15 grand fee. And the flip side is, when somebody does something well, put the phone up. Bob, the way you stopped that tent from bombing out was magnificent. You handled that. What was that phrase you used? That was brilliant. In fact, in the Friday meeting, can you tell everyone this story? That was great. So the moment of ecstasy, they remember when it's reinforced. You got a great leader has coaching built into their DNA and into the corporate DNA. And the thing about coaching is, it has so many benefits. You're teaching people, you're building morale, you're doing it while you're working. While you're talking to Bob, everyone else is hearing you, so they're learning. But also, when people feel they're learning, they're much more inclined to enjoy their job. People leave jobs because they feel that they've stagnated. So coaching, hallelujah, is retention. Coaching is retention. I mean, you interview people every day, right? And you ask people in all walks of life, why are you wanting to change jobs? And often the answer is, I have stagnated. I've stopped learning. I'm not getting better. It's built into the human condition that people want to improve. And if they feel they're improving, if they feel they've got a mentor and a coach, they're going to feel they're in the right place. So I'm not spending much time on this, but you tell people what they do well, and then you tell them what they need to do to be truly excellent. So often we spend all our coaching time on underperformance, and that's good as long as there is a belief they can become good. but we also need to turn the good into great. And that's a coaching thing. Let's move on. Time's not our friend. A couple of things about coaching. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but as I said before, coaching is best done in real time. Coaching is best done with live feedback. And sometimes you've got to shut the fuck up and teach. And here's an example. You take your consultant out on a client visit. Well, let's be honest. Mostly when we do that, we run the client visit and the consultant sits there like the wallflower. And actually, let's be really honest. Sometimes we're kind of showing off because we're good at it. And then we take them out on 3 or 4 visits and we say, that's the way to do it. Good luck. That is not coaching, right? Yes, you train them. Yes, it's good to show them. But then the day comes where you go on a client visit and they run it and you shut up. And then you give them feedback afterwards in the taxi or on the walk back. Right? That's so powerful. You can always leap in if they really screw it up. But coaching is not always you talking. Feedback. Feedback is the food of champions, right? People who are really, really good accept feedback, and good consultants who are hungry will accept feedback if it's couched in the right language. They love it and they will change accordingly. So real time, don't take the, I mean, training's good and you got to train people on certain things, but coaching's better. Build into your DNA that there's no embarrassment. Never humiliate a person, right? When in an open situation, or well, ever for that matter. But in an open situation. So the coaching's got to be positive, affirmative, even if it's correctional. And real life is so if you teach someone how to screen someone on the phone, that's good. Then you do a role play, and then they screen the person on the phone with you listening in and giving them feedback afterwards. This is coaching. And great leaders are great coaches, and you see it all through life. You see it in sport, you see it in business, you see it even in families. And it's non-negotiable in my view. I said earlier that managers have subordinates and leaders have followers. But now I'm saying that the actual measure of a good leader is the production of more leaders, not only followers. So you have to be brave. You have to hire people who have better potential than you. I'll be honest with you, I've been successful in this business, I guess, and I have built some pretty big companies and screwed up a couple, but overall, I'm ahead. But mostly, if I had a talent, it was selecting people who could be better than me. And I never mind about that, because in the end, I'm owning the company and I'm probably better at actually the leadership thing at that level, but maybe, I don't know. But many of them were better at managing, they were better at recruiting, they were then better at leading, they could start an office in another city better than me, and I loved it because it's leverage, and that's how you build a business. So your goal is to build a business where more leaders are coming through. And if you're going to build a business that's sustainable in a normal environment, a sustainable business, it doesn't rely on you. By definition, the building of a sustainable business, a business that has a value, a business that somebody will pay you for, a business that is actually an asset, you have to build leaders. So a great leader creates more leaders. And then there's the other C, which is courage. And you do have to be brave as a leader. It's lonely. You've got to make difficult decisions. You've got to take risks. You've got to do very difficult things like fire people sometimes, or performance manage people, or counsel. You know, even something, you've got to have the courage to uphold your standards, you know. And I see people falling down on this all the time. Like, this is the way we behave in this company. These are our values. These are our standards, except for Jim, because he's a big biller. So he can be a bit of a dick because we're scared we're going to lose his billing. Please do not beat ethos. If you're a real leader, you will counsel with Jim and you will get him on track, or he can go somewhere else, because we are building a company that has standards. So leadership it sounds like a strange word, but you've got to enforce unpopular decisions. You've got to enforce change. But my experience is that even if the decision is unpopular at the time, if the leader explains the rationale clearly and is steadfast in her or his result, people not only accept it, but they'll respect it. What they won't respect is wishy-washy, half decisions, backing down, inconsistency. That's what destroys morale and performance. It takes courage to uphold the standards. And I'd say that the standards you set are the behaviors you walk past. Okay, so you walk into the office and there's a squabble between two consultants and you just keep going into your office. You just said that's acceptable. You walk past your reception and there's a candidate sitting there for half an hour, but you just let it ride. That then says you accept that behavior, right? So it's the behaviors you walk past that are the standards you're setting. And sometimes to confront those situations, it takes courage, not physical courage, but moral courage and emotional courage. Yeah, and this is really what I was talking about. Obviously, when I prepared this PowerPoint, I wasn't thinking of the crisis that we currently face, but this is actually a perfect example. You don't make friends in a crisis. Your people will show loyalty, will come with you through a tough journey if you've built up your goodwill equity. And your goodwill equity is the things I've been talking about: coaching, mentoring, clarity, communication, consistency, fairness. By these behaviors, when the shit hits the fan, you're going to have the loyalty of the people. You can't earn it in the crisis, sadly. Just fair that. Comprehension, what I mean by that is, and I'll be honest with you, a great leader is a good listener. I am an appalling listener, right? I don't listen to understand. I listen to come up with my answer. And I had to coach myself. Remember I said it's like leadership's like kicking a football. You can get better at it by practice. Well, I had to practice here. I'm a terrible interrupter. I can't concentrate on the other person without working hard at it. I make assumptions. I'm not good. I've got better. I've got a lot better actually, but I wasn't good at listening to the whole person. So you hear the words, but what does the body language tell you? What does the eyes tell you? In fact, it's good to be slower to understand. What I mean is don't make the assumption. Ask a lot of questions. It's a key trait of a great leader is their listening skills and their slowness to understand on purpose so that they don't make assumptions, because assumptions is what really screws us in recruitment and in life for that matter. And now I think we come on to the last C, which is creativity. And this has become increasingly important in a modern era where technology is changing so fast. A good leader will be a self-disruptor. And people say, well, gee, you want me to innovate. What do you want me to do? You want me to invent Uber or some? No. All you need to do as a good leader is simply ask this question: why do we do it this way? And ask it about everything and ask it all the time. A good leader will slaughter sacred cows because the cows are no longer relevant. So a good example, the other day I had a client who said, why do we, when we have a resume for a client, why do the recruiters type out a whole page of a covering note about the candidate? And everyone was like, oh, because that's what gets the interview. It's not the resume, it's our brilliantly compiled cover notes. And he said, bullshit. I'm canning it from today. There was an uproar. People were in tears, canning it. No client ever mentioned it again. What he did is he said to his recruiters, don't write it. Call your client and tell them why they should interview this candidate. Interview hit rates went through the roof. That's innovation. That's creativity. A small thing you say, but it resulted in more people being interviewed, and that, as you know, it results in more placement. Okay, some final notes before I'm sure that Mike will ask me some questions. First of all, you want to create a high-performance culture. A couple of things I've learned. You've got to have non-negotiating operating rules. There's got to be, this is the way we operate around here, and people have got to stick to it. If you've got a whole random sort of hippie commune where everyone's doing it their own way, well, good luck to you in getting a high-performance culture. You might have one or two high-performance people, but your average across the business will be low. High expectations, reward for performance, clarity around goals, and measurement. You can't manage what you don't measure. If you are a person who thinks KPIs are old school, that's like saying food is old school. I don't care if you don't like the word KPI. The problem with KPIs is the way they deliver it. It's the actual KPI selected that are wrong. It's not the concept. The concept of measuring activities is exactly right. You're not going to succeed in recruitment if your consultants don't do enough stuff. They also have to do that stuff at a certain quality. They've got to do it with the right people. You're not going to score any goals unless you take a number of shots at goal. If you take no shots at goal, you will score no goals. If you take one shot at goal, if the god of football is smiling on you, you might score one goal. Very unlikely. If you take 10 shots at goal and the quality is good, the chances go up. It's a trite little metaphor, but it's exactly the same. So measurement is important. And then the big secret is accountability. The big secret, because it's lacking in, maybe it's lacking in all management, but it's lacking across most recruitment companies. They have goals, they have activities, they have KPIs, and if you don't hit them, then you have next week's goals, we have next year's behavior. It's all bullshit. You've got to have accountability, and you've got to have a company where feedback is cultural, not personal. You can expect to get feedback in a high-performing company. This is how you could do it better. Also positive feedback, but often this is how you can get better. Do you think you play for the Springboks or the or let me not say the Wallabies at the moment, or the All Blacks, and you play badly and you don't get feedback? Man, you get feedback. If you don't improve next game, you're out. You're dropped. You're in the reserves. Now, I'm not saying you're going to fire people left, right, and center, but we need feedback, immediate and clear feedback. And the big missing thing about accountability is that there is consequences. So if you want a high-performance business, there is measurement, there's accountability, and there's consequence. Measurement is, we've learned that if we do 5 client visits, we pick up 2 job orders. So let's do 5 client visits. Of course, the quality and all that's built in. So we measure it. And then there's accountability, where the recruiter accepts that they're going to do these 5 things. They agree, they build it into their own dashboard. But then if they don't hit that number, then there's a consequence. Now, I'm not saying consequence in a negative way, like, are you going to be fired or are you going to get a bollocking or something? But there's a consequence, which is at the very least a conversation. The consequence might be something really positive, like training or some other feedback. But there's a conversation, and there is a requirement for you to explain why you didn't hit the goal that you agreed to. You want a high-performing business? You build in measurements, goals, accountability, and consequence. And very few recruitment companies have that. Finally, or second finally, I think. Yeah, second finally. A business is never going to outpace its leader. This is a truism, right? It doesn't mean to say that the leader has to be the highest bidder or anything like that, but the leader sets the standards, right? The leader sets the standards in all things. Now, what do I mean by that? In ethics, in energy, in customer service. Your impact is massive, right? In integrity, the leader sets the benchmark. In optimism, in quality, you just don't have a team pumping out high quality if the leader doesn't pump out. You don't have a positive, optimistic team if the leader is negative. You don't have a team with high integrity if the leader shortcuts. So that's the responsibility you have. And that's the sort of person you should hire into those roles. And finally, and I think this is finally, people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. For many, many years, I was the same as you. And if somebody left, I'd say, bloody idiot. Why would she leave us? She's a fool. In fact, I think she's on the drugs. Why would she do that? Oh, we didn't like her anyway. And we're justified. Well, people don't leave. What is a company? A company is a bloody legal document in some dusty drawer. It's a set of computers in an office. They all look the same. People don't leave a company. They leave the leadership, because it's the leadership that creates the environment and the ethos and makes the decisions around bonus plans and communicates and is authentic or not, and all the things I spoke about. So a really healthy discipline, which is really awkward, is when somebody leaves your company, is to say, what did we do wrong? Not what did they do wrong? Because it shines the spotlight where it really needs to be. And finally, I think probably Mike's going to talk about this, but I did write a book. And by the way, I'm not plugging this book for commercial reasons. I'm donating all the proceeds of this book to the Australian Bushfire Fund. Isn't it sadly ironic that very recently we thought the bushfires in this country were the worst thing that could happen to us in a century, and then something worse happened. So, but when I wrote this book, I'm donating the proceeds, and I've sold 7,000. But the reason I'm promoting it is I think it will help you, whether you're a recruiter or a leader. And I've managed to get a discount for UK readers through our publisher over there. So, Mike, that's all I've got to say, other than to answer your questions if you have any.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. Really insightful. By the way, I'd wholeheartedly recommend Greg's book. One of the things I love about it is the brutal honesty, and you know, you've displayed that today, because how many leaders, if they're really truthful about it, like the ego part of being the leader, whereas what you're doing is peeling a layer off yourself and sharing your mistakes, and that's a great quality for anyone, because somebody said to me years ago, better to have sailed with a mariner that sunk. Now, you've not exactly sunk, Greg, but you have you've made mistakes and you share them freely, and people learn from mistakes. They learn from successes and mistakes, obviously. So I've got a few questions here coming in, and in the chat room, if anyone has any final questions, please drop them into the chat room. If you, notwithstanding what you've said today, what would you say are your biggest leadership mistakes?
Look, as you said, the book is really built around most mistakes, and I have come. I have got an ego. I've got pride. I can get embarrassed like anybody else, and I would say for the first 15 years of my leadership, I wouldn't have owned up to my mistakes very easily. Or I would have finessed it so that a mistake, always ended up as a good story in the end. But I've come to love my mistakes because you get better, and it's helped. I've been an advisor for 7 years to owners of recruitment companies, and it's all built on, look, I did that, and this is what happened, and then I did it another way, and this is what happened. So there are lots of them. I think it's kind of the reverse of that webinar I've just given you. I think I've made the mistake of not being clear. I've made the mistake of under communicating. In my early years, I was a big teller of people. I was also far too black and white, right? I have a strong personality, and I'm opinionated in a sense, and I certainly was. And I was naive when I was young, and I try to forgive myself because I was young, but I sort of thought everyone should get the message in the same way. Now, while you've got to be consistent in your treatment of people, there is a different way to deliver a message, right? And a different way to get it across. And what I learned is, and I made this mistake for years until I got smarter, is you've got to win people's hearts before you can win their minds. So they might think you're a good recruiter and very successful, but they can still think you're a total dick. So you've got to be starting with people knowing that they're safe to share things with you. Sorry, I've been talking 12 hours straight today. They've got to understand that, or believe that you have their interests at heart. You've got to communicate in a way. Nobody learns when they're being humiliated, right? And I am a smart ass. I'm quick with the word. I've never been a bully, but I'm quick with the response and a retort. And sometimes you've got to, I made that mistake quite a number of times. I've also made many hiring errors. I didn't talk about today, but many hiring errors, which I've got better at. I've made a lot of mistakes as the market has declined, and we could another day talk about that, obviously. But mostly my mistakes that I regret are about interpersonal communication, telling rather than coaching, lack of patience, lack of listening. I am much better at that now. People actually come up to me and they say I'm good at it. I'm not, but I've worked at it, right? I've now become passable at those things. But they are the key things if you want people to trust and believe you.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Some really wise words there. We've got a question coming in the chat room from Harry. And Harry is saying, as someone who has set up multiple recruitment firms, at what point did you decide to leave or sell one and start another, and why?
Okay, that's a good question. So there are 3 businesses that I've probably exited in a significant way. I've been a minor shareholder of several others and done a range of quirky things. But the first one I set up when I was 27, it was called Recruitment Solutions. There were 2 other guys. That business was in Australia, and we built it over 11 years to 200 plus people, the revenues of 60 million. And we listed it on the Australian Stock Exchange, which is the same as selling it, right? Because you sell your shares in that listing, or we sell half our shares actually. And why did we do it? Well, I was not even 40 yet. And yes, there was the allure of recognizing a value for part of the assets that I built with the other guys. And the day it listed, it was worth 25 million, and in the afternoon it was worth 30 million because the shares went up 15% or something on the day. And at its peak, it was worth 100 million. So, and I was only at smaller shareholder. I'm not trying to talk about the money. I'm trying to talk about the success of the thing. And yes, there was that. But our real reason for listing it was to get access to money to grow that business through acquisitions. And so that was the primary goal. So I was still on the board. In fact, there was only 2 of us on the board, because when you sell a business like that, you end up with outside non-executive directors and what have you. And truthfully, we didn't do a great job of growing it after that. We didn't, you know, when you list a company on the stock exchange, a small company, that is a small company on the stock exchange, they want growth, boy, and they want to see that thing grow fast. And we did grow, but not at the pace. So that was an exit for money, but also, frankly, we wanted to do a very big thing. We wanted to. There were only 4 other publicly listed recruitment companies in Australia, and this was groundbreaking. And we wanted to create something significant. That was the first one. I invested in a company called. I started a company called People to People. It still goes today. It's in its 15th year. That is a $100 million turnover company. I've never done a day's work in it in my life. So I can't really take any credits for its success, although I do regularly, and I probably will today, because I've been the advisor and I guess the wise uncle, not always wise, but and that was a business that, I'll be honest with you, we started over a barbecue at my house with 2 ex-Recruitment Solutions employees who said they weren't happy where they were. I encouraged them to start. I put in some of the money. I helped them on their way. And when I sold the majority of my shares, I did it because it was a lot of money. And I was in my 50s and I wasn't running it, so there wasn't any pain of leaving it. I'm still a director of that company. I'm still a minor shareholder, but it was an exit after 10, 12 years, which made commercial sense. And the third one was a company called Firebrand. That was born out of the 2009 recession. We in this country call it the GFC, but you know, the one, Lehman Brothers. It was pretty bad in the UK. It was very bad in the UK. I mean, I was running a business in the UK. We had an office in London and Manchester, and it was a bloody nightmare. Also right across Asia and in Australia, terrible. But out of that came this opportunity to do a management buyout, and I started a company called Firebrand. And that was a company that had 10 offices in 8 countries. And it was really a play on timing the market. A business had collapsed in permanent, particularly, with the company called Acclaimed. And then what we did was we did a management buyout of 10 of their offices with their support. They remained a minor shareholder. I was the major shareholder, and our goal was to build that company in the recovery. And we did, but I'll be honest with you, that was one of my, Mike said, you know, you want to be with a navigator who's sunk a few times. Didn't sink, but I hit the rocks, I'd say. It didn't grow as fast as we'd like. It was a lot harder. It was a longer haul. We had these 10 offices. They were in 8 countries. There were 4 languages involved. It was a fucking hard business to run. And not only that, we only had about 80 staff. Sounds a lot, but spread across 9 or 10 offices. That's only 8 an office. So you really had an alliance of small companies, and therefore we had the problems of small companies. It went okay, but I was in my late 50s or mid 50s by now, and I could see it was going to be 5, 6, 7 years of hard work, and I didn't want to do it. So I sold the business, and it still exists. It's going quite well in Australia, actually, but I didn't make any money out of that particularly, to be perfectly honest with you, but everyone kept their jobs and away it went, but without me. So there are different reasons in each case, and it's mostly to do with your time of life, your aspirations. When we listed Recruitment Solutions, I had no intention of leaving. You know, I wanted to be part of running a listed company and take it to the next level. When I sold People to People, it was a financial, all my friends who had done well. I'd helped those guys be very successful. They have been, they've created great wealth for quite a number of people. And it was time, you know, to realize an asset. So that's why I did that. Sorry, Mike, it's a bit of a long answer.
No, again, love your honesty, Greg. Thank you for that. I'm sure everyone would appreciate that. And also, I understand it's a bit late in the evening for you. So I've just got one final question from Neil. Neil's saying, what advice would Greg give to someone who runs a small business about managing the issue of still having to be a key biller whilst trying to be the leader and grow the business?
Well, who was that? Bill, was it?
That's Neil.
Neil. So Neil, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but if you go to the RCSA website, I did a 4-hour webinar. Sorry, not webinar, live thing last year and it's on exactly that topic, and they'll sell you the video of that for, I don't know, I've got no idea how much. But I would encourage you to do that, because that's the 4-hour answer. The quick answer today is, you have to manage your time in a very, very powerful way. You're a billing manager. That's what that session's called. Doesn't matter if you're the owner. You're a billing manager, which means you've got a target and you've got to still manage people. And it is the most difficult job in recruitment, right? When I say that, people say, you're joking. You were the CEO of a 250-person company. Well, if you're a CEO of a company, you can tell someone, I won't meet you now, I'll meet you tomorrow. You can tell somebody who assists you to make that call. When you're a billing manager, you've got a client on the phone giving you a job, a candidate turning down a job on the other line, and a consultant crying in front of you because she had an offer turned down, right? And you've got to deal with that. So you've got to allocate your time. And the 3 things that you've got to spend 80% of your time on, Neil, is 1, billing, 2, coaching, and 3, performance management. 80% of your time on those 3 things. So billing, because you've got to do your numbers. Coaching, because even if there's 3 or 4 of the rest of you, it's leveraged through people, right? It's no good if you're doing most of the billing and then you're carrying 3 people. So you have to invest enough time, and you have to be a good enough coach to get those people to a point where they're covering their salary, they're covering their cost of seat, which is their share of the expenses without their salary, and then giving a reasonable return, which for you is for the owners. Not that you're going to go and put it in your bank account, because mostly you've got to pay tax on that, and then you have to reinvest for the next year. But if they're not doing that, you're going backwards. So allocate your time in those 3 ways. Remember that it's through leverage, and then go and listen to the 4-hour version of that answer, which will be a hell of a lot better than the 40-second version.
Thank you, Greg. And, some of the pointers you've given us today in terms of leadership, the clarity, the hope, I think it was a quote I saw about Napoleon, which, okay, he was probably a despot back in the day, but he said a leader is a dealer in hope. And so Alex Ferguson, in his excellent book, Leading, which is a really good business book, forget sporting affiliations. And he said a leader's job is to make the people believe the impossible is possible. And if you look at right now in today's market, there'll be people thinking there's no vacancies out there, no one's hiring. But my biggest parallel to that was probably the recession of 1990, which was worse than the GFC. And
yes, I agree with you.
I was on the phone 5 hours a day back then, and I might pick up 2 vacancies in a week, but I'd fill one of those vacancies. So I'm still billing big, so I think, leadership, and Neil, for you, looking at how to galvanize the team and inspire them to know that there will still be pockets of replacement hires, even in companies that have to let people go. The key person leaves in a business. What are they going to do? Bury their head in the sand and let it go bust? So
yeah, exactly.
I think it's, and that part of knitting together the strategies Greg's been talking about with, some on the ground stuff you can do on the desk, hopefully will be of help. Simon's got one last question here. He's saying, thanks for the benefit of your experience, much needed positivity in these strange times. Also, how is Greg surviving without any cricket to be watching? So a nice way to answer that, but not so nice. YouTube.
Yeah, I've got an answer for it, actually. Just with Neil, going back to Neil's question. Again, I'm not trying to flog my products, but my book's got 2 chapters on his question. So if you don't want to get the video, just get the book. As far as the cricket's concerned, a terrible thing happened as a result of the fact there's no cricket, and the fact that my son, one of them, is locked in the house with me under these conditions. So we went out into the backyard and he bowled at me, and I lasted 3 balls. He got me 1 in the nuts, 1 on the head, and the other one hit my middle stump. So I sent him to his room.
That sounds like a good decision, Greg. Well, my version of that is golf, because golf has been killed off in the UK now. So I've just bought a driving range net for my back garden, and I'm going to be out there hitting a few balls. But thanks for your words of wisdom today. Thanks everyone for joining, and also for the questions that came in. I hope you've got some inspiration, as Simon was indicating there, of a few things that you can do differently. Show your people the way. There are still pockets of business out there, and you can find them. believe and crack on and make those placements. Thanks again, Greg. All the best, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this free webinar recording. Remember, you can access over 80 hours of recruitment-specific training content at recruitmenttraining.com. Simply head over to our website and start your trial today. We hope to see you again on future webinars.